Hey there. It's been a little bit, but I decided to come back with a story from this summer that was too good to keep to myself. As many of you will remember, I'm a park ranger for a large swath of national park that runs through the heart of Georgia. Our reach extends out for quite a way and includes the bodies of water there within. Usually, this means we have to help maintain them, especially after storms, but we occasionally also have to help dredge for bodies and other things that the local authorities believe might be dumped there. So, when I got a call from the local news, Channel 13, about the sighting of Catherine in Lake Mascara, it took me all of my limitless patience not to slam the phone down. The Park Service is not prepared to make a statement on the existence of a large marine creature in Lake Mascara, and calmly hung up on her before she could ask me any more questions. It's been like that for about a week, and this was about the third call today I had gotten about it, though it was the first one from the news. The yellow journals had called looking for information. The scandal rags, the cryptozoologists who were probably calling from the depths of their mother's basement as they looked for permission to investigate, and now the local news. This was starting to get out of hand, and the Park Service was going to have to make a statement sooner or later. It had started, as most things do, with something someone had put on TikTok. A couple of fishermen were on the lake, though that might give you too grand an idea of the place. Lake Mascara was about the size of your average Walmart store, and it was mostly inhabited by brim, catfish, and bass. The two men were out in a little boat, reeling them in with some regularity, when something big had moved under their boat and jostled them. One of them had asked just what the hell that had been, and then something big and gray had broken the surface beside the boat. The shaky cam had made it hard to see, but it was big and gray and had something on its back. The two men had started babbling, talking about a creature in the water, and after the video broke 20 million views on TikTok and YouTube, people started coming to the lake in droves. 20 million people didn't just randomly show up, of course, but the thousands that did certainly boosted the attendance at the park a whole ton. That being said, they weren't exactly the kinds of people you would expect to come to the park. There was no rule against camping near the lake, but it wasn't something guests usually did. They stuck to the established campgrounds, or if they were feeling bold, they pressed on into the less developed areas. The lake was usually avoided due to the bugs and the wildlife that found their way to the water source. These people either didn't know this or they didn't care. They camped right on the lake shore if they were feeling bold, and you could hear the snap of shutters from the ranger station on quiet nights. The tags on TikTok had only increased the attendance, and the number of campers were growing by the day. We didn't have any trash cans or shower facilities, but hey, that didn't seem to stop them. We had a lot of complaints about trash on the ground and animals being attracted by food and trash that had been left out. We had even more complaints about people bathing in the lake, and it seemed that the presence of a monster hadn't stopped them from swimming and bathing in Lake Mascara. Most regular guests had opted to stay away from the lake, and the people camping there were using it as a kind of festival ground. I'd seen people down there selling Catherine merchandise, plushies and t-shirts and the like, and the number of people doing collaborative TikToks was huge. The number of people walking around in next to nothing was pretty expansive too, and we had all gone down there once or twice to remind them that if they planned to camp for longer than 6 days, then they would either need to get a new permit or they would be fined. As of now, Most of them had been fined at least once for something, and they showed no signs of dispersing or paying their fines. All because some idiots had decided they found a monster in the lake. We thought that was the worst of it, the camping and the casual nudity and the trash, but boy, were we wrong. The day after the call from the local news had come in, the park services finally decided to make their statement. It just wasn't the one we were hoping for. We understand that you are all interested in the sightings of a monster in Lake Mascara. Here at the Parks Department, we don't put a lot of stock in things we find on TikTok. So, we have decided to debunk or prove this one way or another. We have called in a specialist, Dr. Hornman, to search the lake and tell us what he finds. This should be completed in a day or two, and we will bring definitive proof, one way or another, about the existence of Catherine, the monster said to reside inside the lake. Well, shit, Mark said, as the head of the Parks Department walked off the stage. You know what that means. Does it mean that these yahoos are gonna clear out soon? I asked. Reporters yelling after the head park ranger as he followed the heads of the department. Nope, it means that we have bypassed all the little idiots, and King Idiot is going to come down now, and one of us is going to be stuck as his chaperone. Turns out Mark was right. You'll never guess who got to be Dr. Thaddeus Hornton's official guide. It was me, of course, because the universe hates me, it would seem. I did some research on Dr. Hornton before he came down, and everything I discovered made me less excited to be his guide. Dr. Thaddeus Charles Hornton was someone with a doctorate in zoology and a minor in marine biology. His credentials in cryptozoology had come later, and he was the foremost expert on fantastic creatures and their impact on our ecosystem. He had hunted Sasquatch in the Appalachian Hills, Yeti in the snowy peaks of Southern America, water monsters in various bodies of water, redcaps and elves in Iceland, and a dozen or so other things that he seemed to believe existed. He was roundly considered to be a fraud in most traditional circles, but amongst the less accredited zoologists, he was a god. He arrived on Monday, about 3 hours late, with a tank. Well, okay, a tank might be unfair. The cavil, which is what was written across the side in red letters, was apparently a submersible about the size of a minivan. It had tank treads, spindly arms for grabbing, and a light on the front that probably wouldn't do it a lot of good once it started kicking up mud. It looked big enough for 4, maybe less if the guts were full of equipment, and I made a mental note not to be talked into being one of those people. The welding looked less than professional, and as the flatbed brought it around to the lake's edge, the people in tents began to cheer as Hornton hung out the passenger side door and flashed V's at the crowd. I suppose even these people had heroes. Dr. Horton reminded me of the character Shao Tucker from the Full Metal Alchemist series. He was middle-aged and looked like he weighed a comfortable 250 in his loafers and lab coat. He looked more like someone's middle-aged dad than a brilliant scientist, and his thick glasses and short hair would have been right at home at a PTA meeting or a piano recital. As underwhelming as he appeared, he made up for it with a big personality. As the flatbed stopped beside the water, the back dipping to set the cavil in the water, he jumped out and went to stand on a little podium that had been erected for him. "Truth seekers!" he cried, and the crowd cheered as he waved and flashed V's at them. "You all know me. I'm Dr. Thaddeus Hornton, Doctor of Zoology, Marine Biology, and Cryptozoology. I'm also the writer of Searching for Skunk Ape, which can be bought wherever books are sold for $19.99, and Lake Champlain, Den of Delusions, also available for $19.99. I have come with my latest brainchild, the Cavil 2, in order to prove without a shadow of a doubt that Lake Mariscarcra is the home of another scientific marvel. The crowd went wild, and he waved his hands and brought them to silence. I have the full backing of the Parks Department and have been given 3 days to prove my claims that within these waters live a monster. So for your own safety, I ask that you all please keep your distance from the shore while I work. I will take 2 hours every day to answer questions and sign books for a nominal fee, but the bulk of my time will be spent inside this great submersible as I search for Catherine. He was joined on the stage by a bulky guy who looked like he would have been more at home inside a tank. His hands were perpetually caked in grease, and his arms were rotten with the kind of corded muscle you only get from consistently lifting heavy things. His hair was cut short, his blue eyes glaring across the crowd like a challenge, and I don't think I ever saw him without a cigarette in his mouth, unless he was inside the sub. This was Marcus, the man who built the Cavil and served as Hornton's bodyguard, driver, mechanic, and whatever else he needed. He was quiet, broody, and no nonsense, so we got along just fine. Hornton met me as he came off the stage, and I could tell that he and I were probably not going to be best friends. "Ah, excellent! You must be the assistant that the Parks Department sent over. I need a place large enough to park my RV, a perimeter created around my sub, and a latte would be lovely too, if there's a Starbucks in the park." "I can probably get you 2 of those things, but the best I can do coffee-wise is the stuff we have in the station." He pursed his lips. "That's a shame. Marcus, be a lamb and go get the RV, will you?" Marcus glanced around the crowd like he was assessing threats. "I probably shouldn't leave you alone, Doc. Crowd this size, things could go sideways pretty quick." "Oh, posh! Our new friend here will keep me safe while you're gone, won't you?" he said, grinning at me in a way that I was sure was supposed to be reassuring. I wasn't sure I could keep the people out of the lake, let alone off him, and when I offered to go get the RV if he wanted to stay here, Marcus asked if I could drive something with 12 gears. When I told him I could, he tossed me the keys and said that it was by the ranger station. This led to a delightful 2-mile walk, and when I got back, Hornton had already set up a table and was fielding questions and signing books. He took some pictures, signed the chest of a very well-endowed woman, and did not so much as look at the lake all afternoon. Once his RV was set up, he claimed that he needed to get ready for his dive tomorrow and promptly went inside for the rest of the day. I gave Marcus my phone number and told him to call me before they dove tomorrow. He said that he probably would be up around 9 or 10. Doc doesn't really do early mornings, and went to guard the Cavil as I went back to the station. The next day, Dr. Horton and Marcus drove the Cavil 2 into the lake, amidst thunderous applause, and I was left to watch the RV and monitor the radio. This probably sounds exciting, and it was for about 2 hours. Doc Horton would radio back every few minutes with these astounding updates or long soliloquies about the wonders of the deep, but it all got pretty tiresome after a while. It was pretty clear that the only thing this guy had discovered was how much he loved the sound of his own voice, and when he re-emerged near sunset, again to thunderous applause, he stood in the porthole of the sub and waved some more. No sightings today, but we got some exciting things on the camera, and I'm excited to try again tomorrow. I have every certainty that tomorrow will be the day that I solve this mystery." Applause, 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 and then Dr. Horton retired to his RV just as the sun went down. Whatever they were paying this guy, I hoped it was translating into ticket sales for the park, because this was beginning to feel like a waste of my time. The Caval 2 was cool and all, but an underwater tank felt like overkill for a body of water that was essentially a retention pond with fish in it. The whole thing was about a mile long, and at its deepest, it was only 20 feet. As I told Marcus to call me if they needed anything, I drove my cart back to the ranger station to get some shut-eye. I hoped they would get bored after tomorrow and just pack it in, but I wasn't really holding my breath. My pessimism, it seemed, was to be rewarded, though. The day dawned bright and warm, and as Dr. Horton prepared to dive, I noticed Marcus wasn't with him today. Suddenly, he appeared in one of those cherry pickers and began dumping something into the water. The crowd gasped, and I was a little surprised when the water began to turn red. They were chumming the water, it appeared, and I supposed it would be a good day for the catfish and the bass. The chum was mostly blood and fish, but I could see some bones and ground beef in there too, as well as some strip steak and a lot of chicken feed, which mostly floated to the top. Marcus must have had quite an arm on him because he got it pretty far from his height. When it was all gone, Marcus brought the bucket down, and Horton stood on the top of the sub and addressed the crowd. "It's okay, everyone. I decided a snack might be in order for our shy monster, so hopefully her appetite runs in the carnivorous direction." The crowd laughed. He laughed. Marcus tossed his cigarette into the water as he climbed in, and they were away. An hour later, the fun started. I had been getting a lot of radio traffic about catfish and bass, some turtles, even an eel or two, but when something started stirring up the water out there, the traffic became a little less friendly. "Mayday! Mayday! There's something attacking my sub!" "Come back, Caval 2, over," I said, shaking some of the sleepiness off as I grabbed up the handset. "Oh, screw radio protocol! There's a huge something in this pond, and it's..." The mic went dead, but not for long. "It cracked the hull! There's water coming in! We are abandoning! Marcus, what are you..." But the line went dead, and the gathering people sounded worried. They had wanted a monster, but it appeared they didn't want one like this. Something breached the water then, and as it started shooting across it, I thought we might have our monster. It wasn't as big as I'd expected it to be, maybe the size of a person, but it was lumpy and it thrashed around a lot. It was coming straight for the shore, its skin slick and red-looking, but when it washed up panting, I saw that it was not the monster, but our lost guest. Marcus had grabbed the doctor and swam him out, and now the distinguished Dr. Thaddeus Horton was coughing up chum on the bank and being pounded on the back by everyone and their brother. They tried to do the same to Marcus, but he shot them such a murderous glance that no one dared to go near him. "It was huge," Dr. Thornton said when he was finally able to draw breath. 30 feet long at least. It had a head like a spear and teeth like iron. It ripped the Caval 2 apart and would have had us for breakfast if not for the quick thinking of my..." But everyone turned as something big broke the surface. I caught a glimpse of it as it swam around the chum-clouded water, and it was indeed a monster. It wasn't 30 feet, maybe half that, but it was thick through the body, and its huge mouth sucked up the red water and the nourishment that floated on the top. It was probably getting whatever else the fish had gathered to eat, and as it circled, I recognized it. "It's no monster," I said, laughing despite myself. "It's a huge catfish." "What?" Thornton spluttered. "No, that can't be. It tore my sub apart. It was a monster. It's just a bigger than average catfish. The older they get, the bigger they get. This one must be ancient. Probably lived in this pond since before I was born. They get even bigger than that, or so I've heard. They have massive ones in South America sometimes, but that's still the biggest one I have ever seen." Dr. Thornton began muttering darkly about losing a $750,000 sub to the main course at a roadside diner, but Marcus just laughed as he sat on the bank. The people dispersed after that. A big old catfish was cool and all, but it was no lake monster. Someone from Ripley's came and got it and took it to the aquarium in Gatlinburg, I heard tell, but I wasn't involved in that. Dr. Hornton tried to sue the state, I also heard, but lost when they showed him the part of his contract about entering bodies of water at his own peril. I heard they built another sub, the Cavil 3, and intended to explore down at the bottom of Lake Lanier, which I wouldn't be a part of if you paid me $1 million. All in all, it made for a cool summer story to tell you, and another great adventure here in the park.
You're still here. Thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague here. Always a pleasure to see all my new and old viewers coming by for another one of my spooky tales. If you'd like to support the show, you can always take part in one of our channel offers through Fume or Aura, or you can just click on another video when they come up. I'd really appreciate it. For our newer viewers, we also have lots of playlists and other things if you'd like to get caught up. I know some of my series have been going on for quite a while. If you'd like to get my latest book, there's a link down below that'll take you to my Amazon page. Towesey Homestead just came out, so if that's something you'd like to get your hands on, go ahead and have a look down there. If you'd like a signed copy, you can go ahead and email me from my email address on the site, and I'll get with you about shipping information and ship you a signed copy. If you'd like to support the channel in a more monetary fashion, we also have membership through YouTube, and we've got a Patreon that you can get the information for in the description. We have lots of tiers and everything to suit your needs. Patrons that support on the $10 tier, that's our Ghostly Reader tier, get a book anytime I write one, signed and on their doorstep. As you may have noticed, there's a list of patrons and members on the screen, and I'd like to personally thank every one of them for taking a hand in the future of this channel. Well, that's enough for tonight. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.